So I think in terms of mechanics and roleplay, this is my most versatile build yet. Let's dive in. So disclaimers first, like always, this is a concept first, optimized second style build, building around a concept rather than the best possible damage. Playing this build has been, in my opinion, the most fun I've had in game so far, so I hope you enjoy it too. No optimization section today, as this build already feels great as is. Also, this build is incredibly narrative heavy, so I didn't want this video to get too much longer. I will share some final thoughts at the end though, so if that's all you're after, check the timestamps. So this build has been a blast to put together and offers a few different ways to level. I'll show you what makes the most sense to me, mechanically and narratively. I do feel like this is a good time to mention that if you haven't seen the short with the backstory, it's linked above. Following that, I do want to mention that this is not a case of split personality. Both individuals have been forced into one body. As such, they are aware of each other and are both wrestling for control. After first waking free from your captor's prison, it is the strongest, most powerful emotion that dominates all else: revenge. This desire emanates from the Druid half of your psyche. As such, we are starting our journey as a Druid. Your Druid half is hell-bent on being cured, and after suffering through such twisted experiments, cares little for the whims and problems of others. You are rude and standoffish, understanding the value of help, but not friendship. You will work with others because you must, but you would much prefer to be doing this alone. This notion extends to all interactions with one exception: animals. Compassion is always your first reaction to any animal. Okay, first roleplay beat done, let's make this character. So we are playing a half-elf for this build. Unironically, the merger of a human monk and elven druid, this felt the most fitting. I would prefer wood elf for the subrace since it provides an additional 1.5 meters of movement speed, which is perfect for a mostly melee combatant. For our class, we are starting druid as mentioned, allowing us to choose 2 cantrips. The only 2 here that are likely to see any use are Thorn Whip and Produce Flame. The first will help us reposition enemies. The latter will come into effect more later once we pick up an item around level 6. For our background, none are extremely fitting. The closest is probably Acolyte, giving us insight and religion proficiency. Abilities, and we are going 10 strength, 14 dexterity plus 2 here, 14 constitution, 8 intelligence, 15 wisdom plus 1 here, and 10 charisma. For skill proficiencies, definitely nature, although the other is a hard call. They all seem fitting. I'm going to go with perception. Finally, prepared spells, and you are a divine caster, so make good use of your ritual spells out of combat. I would probably take Fairy Fire, Healing Word, Speak with Animals, and Long Strider here. Finally, before you hack your way off the ship and onto level 2, I suggest you find a scimitar on one of the corpses on the Nautiloid, since they are a finesse weapon and you will be using it until level 3. You are well versed in the use of necrotic energies, having studied the cycles of life since early childhood. You have no issues using your intimate knowledge of deadly spores if it helps you move closer to your goal. Your other half rails against his confines, trying desperately to assert control, but you are not about to let some do-gooder stand between you and salvation. Level 2, and yes, this week we are back to the Spores Druid. I know, 2 weeks in a row, don't worry, we are unleashing the Storm Sorcerer next week. However, we are using Spores Druid very differently for this build, so let's take another look at its features. Firstly, we have Halo of Spores. This uses our reaction to deal 1d4 necrotic damage to an enemy. Secondly, we have Symbiotic Entity. This costs a charge of Wild Shape and grants us 4 temporary hit points per druid level. While those hit points remain, we add 1d6 necrotic damage to all attacks we do. Finally, it also causes Halo of Spores to hit twice for 2d4. These count as separate instances of damage, which will come up a bit later. On second level, as a druid, we also get Wild Shape. I won't go into this too much, feel free to experiment while exploring, but in general, your Wild Shape charges are better spent on Symbiotic Entity. Finally, on this level, we do unlock Bone Chill as a cantrip. This will be your go-to action if you are stuck outside of your melee range and you still want to deal some damage. Level 3, and the other being inside you has been quiet. They stopped their wailing some time ago and you have felt a strong sense of peace washing over you ever since it subsided. You close your eyes and look inward, As if entering a trance, you are whisked away from the physical world and into another place. Across from you is a young man, seated cross-legged, eyes closed. Slowly you approach, and as you stand before him, his eyes snap open. He stands in a heartbeat, grabs your shoulder. "I am sorry," he whispers, as you feel the impact before you see it. Your eyes close, and when you awake, he is gone and you are trapped. Okay, switch time, as we are taking a level in Monk. Firstly, the monk half of ourselves is a selfless and kind man, a follower of Solune. Man, I wish I could choose a deity for this in character creation, but I digress. So we will have to switch up the way we interact now. How you roleplay this is up to you. I'll go more into this in the halftime break, but for now, we are a monk 1. So, as a monk we get a few important features going forward. Firstly, Key, of course, giving us access to a variety of abilities as we level. We get 2 points on level 1 and 1 point per monk level going forward. Right now, we use these key points for Flurry of Blows, which lets us make 2 unarmed attacks with our bonus action. These are D4s right now, but they will go up to a D6 a bit later. And of course they scale with our dexterity due to dexterous attacks. The other important feature here is unarmored defense. This allows us to add our full dexterity and wisdom modifiers to our armor class if we aren't wearing armor. Combined, this is a +6 for us right now, which is a significant upgrade to our Druid robes. So time to ditch the armor and find something else to wear for the time being. Or don't wear anything at all, I guess. Up to you. While you're at it, let's ditch the scimitar. You can continue using it, however, you will have to get rid of it shortly anyway, so might as well rip the band-aid off sooner rather than later. So if it wasn't clear, we are still maintaining symbiotic entity here. That means we are able to dish out 3 attacks, all doing +D6 necrotic damage, and we get Halo of Spores, dealing 2d4 along with it. During your time on level 3, your druid half assaults your mind constantly, desperate to be free. You did not want to keep him contained like this, but this world has enough chaos, and you will restore the balance. During his moments of quiet, you enter your mind's eye and speak with him. You begin with apologies, but are forced to retreat in the face of his overwhelming necrotic assault. You request a truce, to much the same result. Finally, you offer an ultimatum. Order or chaos? How will you be remembered? You see a quiver in his posture for the first time. Something finally got through. But in the next moment, thorny vines shoot from the ground and you are bound hand and foot. You are right, he says. I will not be a villain, but I will not become a mind flayer either. And I cannot leave my fate in the hands of another. I do not wish this either, you plead. We must help one another. After a silence that stretched for eternity, very well, we'll try it your way. And he is gone. So level 4 and we are going back to Druid now. As a level 3 Druid, we get our 2nd level spells, and there are a few here that are perfect for the build. Some that will play a bigger part later on, but for now, Moonbeam feels really great as your monk half sharing their power with you. Radiant and necrotic damage in harmony. Along with that, Moonbeam requires an action to relocate, and at this level you actually do more damage with your bonus action Flurry of Blows, so relocating the beam on your turn isn't as much of a loss. Heat Metal could also be a sharing of power, and Spike Growth as a pickup on the Druid side. We don't have any skills we need to concentrate on as a monk, so incorporating one could be a great option to spice up your encounters. Finally, I just want to mention that your symbiotic entity is on 12 temporary HP now. This is the last Druid level we'll take for a while, so we'll go over dealing with that during the break. Level 5 and we are back to Monk here. While uneasy with each other, you are willing to switch the reins now, depending on the situation. You are far from harmonized in your purpose or abilities, but you resign that you each have your own strengths, and it would be better for you to each play to them for now. So Monk 2 and we get the Step of the Wind dash and disengage features, letting us, for a key point and bonus action, use those abilities and also jump for free. We also get Patient Defense, also costing a key point and bonus action, but granting us advantage on dexterity saving throws and enemies disadvantage on attacks against us. This could help you maintain symbiotic entity, so if you are anticipating a lot of damage, use it. Level 6 and we get our monk subclass here. This is where the build really starts to shine and all those level 2 spells you picked up can be really fun to mess around with. We are taking Way of the Open Hand. Now, we don't get much for this subclass straight away, however Flurry of Blows changes here due to the open hand technique, becoming 3 separate variations, all doing the same damage but with different effects. Topple has a chance to knock your enemies prone, causing the prone status effect, which means you gain advantage on any additional attacks until they stand up. Stagger, making the enemies unable to use reactions, and finally Push, giving you a chance to push the enemy back 5 meters. This is great for pushing enemies off cliffs or into spike growths or maybe moonbeams. Play around with these effects and see what you can come up with. Let me know some awesome combos in the comments. Okay, halftime break. And first thing I want to mention here, this is important, if you really want to roleplay this character and not just use the build, then you need to set for yourself a clear trigger when the personalities swap. If you don't do this, you will start a conversation as the druid and end as the monk or vice versa. I guarantee this will happen. This will make your character feel really inconsistent and bland as their personality shifts depending on the situation. This trigger for me, weirdly enough, was haste potions. I found myself using a bunch of these with this build, and so every time I suffered lethargy, after the potion wore off, the other character took the reins, either for opportunistic or support reasons. This is not mandatory, you play how you want, but I feel this makes for a stronger character concept. Let's talk about gear though, and it is essential that you get a pretty high armor class in order to maintain your temporary HP. Fortunately, your ki and wild shape charges are both restored on a short rest, so you can get the temporary HP 6 times per long rest. So you shouldn't struggle too much, but I definitely recommend going straight for Braces of Defense in Act 1. This will bump your AC or armor class to 18 as early as level 3. Following on from that, other items I recommend in Act 1 are the Sparkle Hands, increasing your chance to hit, dealing lightning damage and granting you advantage against many enemies, Sentient Amulet for ki restoration, and finally the Graceful Cloth. This last one is a great pickup, increasing your attack rolls, damage, AC and initiative all at once. Some other items in Act 1 that you definitely want to pick up, but save these for later. These are Luminous Armor, Gloves of Belligerent Skies, and Boots of Stormy Clamor. These are spread throughout the Underdark and Mountain Pass, so take your time going through the content and you should get everything. Okay, Act 2, and we want to make a beeline straight to Last Light, grabbing the Cloak of Protection. Then onto Callous Glow Ring. Once you have your Callous Glow Ring, I would swap now to equip the items I mentioned, Luminous Armor, Gloves of Belligerent Skies, and Boots of Stormy Clamor. This combo is pretty wild. Using Produce Flame as a light source, you can cause something to take radiant damage from your glow ring, and you start a chain reaction. Every instance of damage you deal causes 2 radiant damage, which triggers Luminous Armor and Gloves of Belligerent Skies, giving everything in 3 meters radiant orbs, reducing their chance to hit by 1 per stack, and causing them to shed light. Also, giving them 2 stacks of reverberation, reducing their strength, dex, and con saving throws by 1 per stack. Finally, Boots of Stormy Clamor triggered from the radiant orbs, adding another 2 stacks of reverberation, reaching 4 stacks and causing each target to take 1d4 thunder damage and potentially fall prone. You will be very strong for this period of the game because, like I mentioned, this triggers from every source of damage, meaning up to 5 times per turn if you include 3 unarmed attacks and 2 hits of Halo of Spores. On to Act 3, and our first pickups here are likely to be Boots of Uninhibited Gushigo and Cloak of Displacement, increasing our damage by our Wisdom modifier and making us much harder to hit. Best of Soul Rejuvenation and Mask of Soul Perception are next, increasing our armor class to 21, increasing our number of attacks if the enemy misses us, which is likely, and increasing our attack rolls, initiative, and perception checks. Finally, we finish the build off with Gloves of Soul Catching, adding another d10 of force damage to our attacks, plus 2 to our constitution, and a choice between a d10 heal or advantage on our attacks every turn. Okay, gear progression done, and on with the build. So level 7, and we are a Monk 4. You have noticed you are starting to find it difficult to differentiate yourself from your other half. You meet and talk every evening in your mind's eye, getting to know each other, an effort to remain sane. You notice ever so slightly that whoever is not in control is growing hazy, almost ethereal where they used to be solid. This has you both nervous. What is happening? What are you becoming? So short level here, but that's okay since we have two big ones coming up. This level we get the slow fall ability, which lets us gain resistance to falling damage. Also on this level we get an ability score improvement, and we are taking dexterity here, trying to reach the cap as soon as possible. If you choose to keep the graceful cloth and braces of defense here, instead of the luminous armor approach, you would be capped on dexterity now and have 20 AC. This is another great option. Level 8, and this brings us to Monk 5. This is a big level for monks as they get the Stunning Strike feature. This ability can be problematic since it is a constitution save by our enemies to our wisdom based DC. However, as I mentioned earlier, Reverberation lowers our enemies' constitution saves by 1 per stack. This makes Stunning Strike much more likely to hit. Also on this level we get the all too amazing extra attack, giving us all the punches we could need in combat. This etherealness is only getting worse, and you fear you are out of time. Unsure if this is what the Mind Flayer is intended for you, you are recognizing memories, thoughts, feelings that are not your own. Where before you were separate, you are now practically one. You don't know where you end and they begin. You both fight with everything you have to hold on to the dregs of yourselves, but you both know that any day now, you will cease to be two, you will be only one. Level 9, and as your minds merge together, you begin to manifest a more potent connection to the two primary forces of your beliefs. Your soul connects to the radiant glow of the monk's power, your body to the necrotic energies of the druids. Your mind, however, is still playing host to that god's forsaken parasite. On this level, we can manifest these energies, adding them to our attacks. We can choose between Psychic, Necrotic, and our main option, Radiant. The damage is 1d4 plus your Wisdom modifier, so 4 to 7 on this level. Additionally, these strikes become magical with the Key Empowered Strikes feature. Better late than never. And Wholeness of Body is the final feature on this level. This ability is once per long rest, but it is a powerhouse, topping up our HP along with our key and giving us 2 bonus actions for 3 turns, resulting in more uses of Flurry of Blows. More attacks is essential for this build since all our damage is built into hitting with those attacks. Level 10, and I leave the fate of our champion in your hands now, as we take another level in Druid. So there's no great options for the cantrip here, pick what you like. As for the ability score improvement, we are of course maxing out dexterity. Level 11, and we are taking another level in Druid, getting level 3 spells. There are a few fun ones here to add to your arsenal. Plant Growth could be a good option, quartering your enemy's movement speed if you're being overwhelmed, or Call Lightning if you really need to AoE some distant enemies. Finishing up the build on level 12, and we are taking a final level in Monk here, getting Evasion and Stillness of Mind. The former causes you to only ever take half damage from spells that require a dexterity saving throw. If you succeed on that save, instead of taking half damage, you take no damage. Stillness of Mind, however, automatically uses your reaction if you are ever charmed or frightened to remove that effect. For a micro-optimization note here, if you wanted to scratch the last 2 levels and go 2 levels of Fighter for Action Surge, go for it. One other thing I did want to mention is the option for a single level in Light Domain Cleric. You would want to take this early on, maybe level 4 or 5, and this would give you the Light Cantrip, which you could use before combat to make sure everything you're hitting is not obscured. You also gain the Warding Flare ability, which would sacrifice your Halo of Spores damage for imposing disadvantage on enemy attacks. Personally, I would only ever consider this as an option for choosing Selûne as a deity and the roleplay that offers to the build, as the features are good, but I prefer not to delay your abilities any further than we already are. On that note though, that's another build done. Man, I love this build, and it was so hard to come up with a narrative. There were so many options, like the Druid uses the Necromancy book in Act 1 to sap the life force, knowledge and skills from the monk, making a full necrotic build, or they battle each other till the end, eventually becoming a mind flayer, or The monk calms the vengeful wrath of the druid, focusing the build on maximizing moonbeam and natural magics. I'd love to hear how you spice up the build and make it your own. Let me know in the comments. That's it though, thanks so much for watching. I'm planning what to do for all you awesome people as a fun way to say thank you to everybody for the incredible effort getting the channel to 1k subs. So keep an eye out for that. Look forward to the Stormcaller build next week, and until then, see ya!